affecting culture change in dementia education, transitioning and starting to think about how we transition, deliver training to our staff to support a more social model. So transforming the education, we're now at the brink of the millennials going to be occupying probably 60% in the next 5 to 8 years of our workforce. We have the Gen X and we have the baby boomers that will be exiting. We have very different learning needs depending on the generation that we are coming from. How many are baby boomers? How many are Gen X? And how many are Gen Y? So a lot of Gen X, few Gen Ys. Very different learning needs depending on your generation. So the baby boomers, that strong work ethic, optimism. Gen X, balance and having fun, personal growth, thinking globally. Gen Y, they're technologically savvy, multitasking, and want to collaborate on decisions, voice their opinions, and value optimism, civic duty, morality, confidence, teamwork, achievement, and morality. Not conducive to our traditional hierarchical structure chain of command, of which is very evident in hospitals and acute care, not so evident in lots of great work being done in long-term care. So our younger workers appear to want a more team-based organizational structure. They want to actively participate and voice their opinions, and encouraging their involvement will actually increase their engagement and sense of belonging. So how do we transform education and knowledge transfer for these new generations? Millennials intrinsically value education but want information in short segment, more depth and real-world experiences as compared to rote memorization, learning through the social interaction, not to be passive recipients of information. And you know, GPA, we're actually looking at transforming the way we deliver rather than, you know, full day workshop and didactic learning. We need to move with the times. We don't want our future generations to be passive recipients of information. There's going to be a lot more personal attention and mentoring from the older generations, and the coach becoming more of a mentor in terms of a true coaching. Constructive feedback, but without judgment. So how do we adapt education and dementia care for the millennial generation and the Gen X? Case-based learning, and we know that basic social and clinical sciences are associated with real-life cases linking theory to practice. And certainly a lot of evidence to support an increase in satisfaction and engagement. Gamification, and that's with our leaderboards, badges, points, is that real socialization form of learning. Flipped classroom, where they get an initial inoculation of dementia, either through an e-learning or self-study, and then followed up by a classroom modality of case study and interactive learning. And then just-in-time learning, app-based, just-in-time training for dementia care would maintain caregiver competencies. So short, little bits of information, having something at their fingertips so that they're ready to learn and take up that knowledge. And so these are the 4 types that we're actually exploring. We're doing great literature search. We're actually evaluating eLearn as we speak, and a flipped classroom model.
I have 2 pieces of education I deliver, and one is on validation and teaching people good communication techniques, and the second part is the DementiAbility methods that focus on adding meaning and purpose to life. And if you think about our traditional Maslow hierarchy of needs, I think long-term care focuses on the bottom 2 rungs, and I try to make this into a square where we are looking at love and belonging, self-esteem, and self-actualization as equal parts, living with life and meaning and purpose across the lifespan. And this only can happen when the organization, the team, comes together with the person at the center, where the physical environment is prepared to look and feel like home, and where the person is engaged with meaning and purpose. So the triggers are removed. We make the home environment look and feel like home from the moment they walk in to the time they go to bed, in their personal and public spaces, and there's themed areas throughout the home where there's things to do that add meaning and purpose to each day. We look at why the behavior. We have a model of care that is person-centered. It looks at the WOW model. Who is this person, past and present? What are your observations, and what are you going to do? That perfectly fits with the model we saw earlier about recreation. The 3 greatest reasons for responsive behaviors are boredom, loneliness, and lack of independence. I need to make sure each person can find their way, find things, and do things independently. Those bottom 2 rungs, we have to remove having staff do things for us, because everything you do for me, you steal from me. And I have lots of successes where we put memory supports in place. I can now find my way. You see the task breakdown here. I have one home in Eastern Ontario who actually videotaped a little testimonial saying, we took 16 residents on our home who had full assist, are now toileting independently, dressing independently, and she says at the end of the day, they're in dry incontinence products. Happy staff, happy residents. And for the social care model, everybody wears name badges. If you want the guidelines, they're on my website. We provide opportunities to be engaged at mealtimes, roles and routines. We have tested out giving people agendas so that they know what's coming, there's a reason to get up every day. They live with meaning and purpose. There's someone to love and something to look forward to. Staff work with residents to do chores. Every staff should have a resident beside them doing something throughout the day so that the roles that they had in the past will be adopted so they can do them in the present. This man had responsive behaviors every day at 3 o'clock because his wife lived in the nursing home and he would leave at 3 o'clock. He always tried to leave. At 2:30, understanding who the person is, what your observations are, who he was in the past, who he is in the present. We've adapted the environment and figured out what to do. He is now working in the workshop in this one with other people because the environment is prepared. There is a place to do things that remind him of home and his life in the past. His behaviors have disappeared. They also found out he could play guitar, and I have a beautiful video of how he now leads the sing-song on days he's not in the garage. Leaders and teams work together, and we say, congratulations. We never have a statement that says, it's your job. We never, when people have to change incontinence products, we say, thank you for what you've done, instead of saying, that's your job. We are creating a change in culture by helping learners, teams, and organizations to work together to enable abilities to create environments where people want to work, most importantly, want to live, work, and visit. When DementiAbility methods are put together with organizational strategies and change, we create a new culture of care.
So I want to talk to you about a new curriculum called the Living the Dementia Journey. It's a training program that focuses on supporting the well-being of persons living with dementia. So the curriculum is, so this is Living with the Dementia Journey. The curriculum consists of 7 modules, which includes the orientation module, and an additional 6 modules that are 3 hours each. Each of those go into more depth into the living acronym. So the living acronym is about learning, improving, validating, interpreting, nurturing, and greeting. And so each of those model goes into that in a little bit more depth. It can be offered, and it has been offered to new staff, and it can also be extended to residents, families, and other team members. There's 3 main goals of the program. The goals are to increase the team members' understanding and awareness about dementia and the experience of living with it from the perspective of those who are living with dementia. Also to build on the strengths, skills, and experiences of staff as it relates to dementia care and services, and also to create and support a joint and shared philosophy of care, to support the well-being of residents, and also everybody who works and visits there. So this program is unique in that the way it was designed and delivered really is a unique sort of model. So as far as creation, the development of it, the Living the Dementia Journey was developed in partnership with residents, family members, team members, volunteers, and community partners, which I work for the Murray Alzheimer Research and Education Program, or MAREP. We were one of the community partners who worked on this development process. The advisory team worked over a course of a period of time in 2012 to envision and describe the model and to look at a future vision for long-term care. And working together, the advisory group identified values, understandings, and practices that were consistent with this shared philosophy. The content really speaks to the current the culture change. So what really makes this unique is that it builds on the things that are happening locally, nationally, and internationally. And the curriculum is really about shifting care and services that focus on the remaining strengths of individuals and their abilities and the perspectives of the residents. So shifting to that perspective and allowing and supporting those living with dementia to the fullest. It's based on sound research and, more importantly, grounded in the perspectives of people living with dementia, their families, and professionals. And the goal really is to create a shared understanding of a philosophy in care, and it builds on awareness, understanding, and compassion. So the other thing I just wanted to mention, too, about the unique nature of this particular program is the delivery. So this is delivered in a cross-functional approach. It's also peer facilitated, so the peers are trained and they deliver the information. It's open to residents, volunteers, families, and staff members, and it uses a dialogue education, the principles of dialogue education and practice. We have piloted the overview module, which is a 7-hour workshop with 526 staff members in long-term care, and we looked at the content, the process of delivery, and the knowledge and skill and practice. And based on the pilot evaluation, the pilot of the program and the evaluation, the program was extremely successful and did meet all of the goals of the program.
So I'll give you a little bit of information about the PIECES program. It's been recently renamed. It used to be PIECES Canada, and they've recently renamed it to PIECES Learning and Development Model. So it's a it's a 16-hour course for registered staff. Really focuses on a very holistic person, care partner-centered model, which enhances the capacity of the individual team, the organization, and the system to support the care of those with really complex chronic conditions, including those with neurological dementia-type illnesses and associated behavioral changes. It really focuses on, as mentioned, a comprehensive, holistic approach looking at physical reasons, intellectual reasons, the emotional abilities of a person, their capabilities, looking at the environment and the social aspects of the care needs, and builds on the person's remaining strengths. It began in '98, just for information, so it's 18 years old now. It's on its 6th revision, and it started in Ontario but is now in 7 provinces across the country. It's based on the 3-question template, so we're looking at, with the team, with the whole team together, anybody who's involved in the care of the person with dementia or with behaviors or personal expressions, what's changed? What is the behavior and what's changed about the behavior? We really use this 3-question template as a systematic, a comprehensive way of gathering everybody's input, having everybody have the ability to contribute to the problem solving of exploring the behavior and potentially these solutions. It shapes teams' conversation, both in the moment and more formal conversations, and it helps prevent from moving to the solutions too quickly. So if we see a responsive behavior, a personal expression, instead of jumping to, well, I think we should do this, we want to use a 3-question template to have all team members, including the person with dementia and family caregivers, contribute to, I wonder why it's happening and what we may be able to do to help. So what's changed, what are the risks and possible causes of the behavior, and then what's the possible actions, what things can we try? So how we support culture change, or how PIECES supports culture change, is based on 4 cornerstones. of the PIECES learning and development model. So it really talks about PIECES using the PIECES learning framework as a shared solution finding. The whole team needs to contribute to having the conversation and be involved in solution finding for sure. And it strengthens effective and collaborative relationships using common language and common approach to care. It's enhancing and translating knowledge. It really involves the lived experience, practice, and research, and we really want to involve best practices always. It's validating. Validating is a large component. It validates the collective wisdom of the person's team, the person with the dementia, the family, and all team members, especially validating observations, validating concerns, acknowledging the unique contributions of all team members, and encouraging individual and team reflective thinking. And then the fourth cornerstone is really acting together. So again, using that common language, everybody thinks the same way, everybody understands the behavior the same way, and then trial different solutions.
So I'm here representing the You First program, which is a program through the Alzheimer Society of Ontario, although most of the work that I do is out of the Alzheimer Society of Peel, which is in the Central West, Lynn. Click that right? Yes, okay. So some of you might be familiar with the You First program, but before I get to that, Alzheimer Society of Canada put out a report in 2012, which looked at some of the dementia statistics, specifically that in 2011, about 750 Canadians have Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. By 2031, that number is expected to grow to 1.4 million. So certainly we have our work cut out for us, both in community and in long-term care. Last week I sat in, I get really winded, so I'm going to apologize in advance. It's just the nature of what's going on right now. Okay, so call a spade, right? Okay. Last week I was at a forensic geriatric mental health day over at Ontario Shores, and again, they shared some pretty interesting stats with us. One being that 80 to 90% of people with dementia will have physically responsive behaviors that are labeled as a problem at some point during their illness, and 50 to 90% of family caregivers report that this is a reason why their loved ones are going to long-term care, is because of those physically responsive behaviors. So this really made me reflect on the presentation today. This is why we need staff that are well-trained in dementia care and that have the confidence to be able to respond respectfully to our clients. So the You First program really gives staff the same set of knowledge, communication tools, values, common approach, all of these things. It's normally offered one day. It's a 6-hour workshop, but it can be divided in 2 half days as well. And You First is an acronym which stands for Understanding the Behavior Changes in the Person, and it ties in very nicely with the PIECES program. We use the PIECES model under that You part of You First. Then we look at flagging possible changes in the person. So why is this behavior a concern now? And it may not be for the person, but it might be for the roommate, for example. Interacting with skill and understanding, reflecting on that behavior, why did this happen, how can we do things a little differently, and then supporting both a person with dementia as well as a family caregiver, but most importantly looking at that team engagement, which we'll speak about a little bit more. So the curriculum itself is really about everything we talked about this morning, essentially. Demonstrating sensitivity and respect for the person with dementia, really understanding their life story, but then also applying that to care and making sure that it is care planned. Ministry likes to see that, right? Recognizing the thoughts and the feelings of that person and how they perceive quality of life. Do they really want to eat those Vicky's chips every day, right? And how do we care plan accordingly? So seeking to understand the person with dementia as well as those behavioral changes, it really allows for a practical tool to enhance dialogue with different care providers. So housekeeping would be involved in this, frontline staff would be involved in this, all team players. And then collaborating with the team, again, making sure we have that care plan that's quite detailed, identifying those high-risk situations as well, and making sure all staff know what to do about those high-risk situations. Because when do crises normally occur in long-term care? Friday of a long weekend, absolutely, right? Always it seems to be the way it happens. And then again, why do we need that team is because each team member is going to perceive the resident differently depending on their relationship. So it's not about blaming PSWs and the care they're providing. They're going to have a different relationship than a dietary staff may or a recreation staff. Okay, so if that's not enough, you get a fancy wheel when you do the You First training program, and the wheel turns and it uses the PIECES model, and it can be used when you're doing case consultations, and it probes the staff. What are we looking at physically, intellectually, in terms of the capabilities, all of these things. So I think the feedback from our participants speaks for itself. Margot, this is an activity from our You First program, and the image story is courtesy of Danielle Steele. If Margot was moving into your long-term care home tomorrow, what do you think you know about her? Think about what you think she did for a living. Was family important to her? Was she a grandma? Does she like babies? Okay. This is actually Margot. Margot's the burlesque dancer, the brunette on the left. She never had any children. And if I can go back, you can kind of see her face. She actually looks a little uncomfortable. So she was a burlesque dancer, never married, never had kids, but her sexuality, grooming, appearance, being French-Canadian, the culture and men were very important to her. After several strokes, she was admitted to long-term care. She had a lot of very interesting stories to tell if the staff had just asked her, and it certainly impacted the behaviors that we would have seen with Margot.
So to sum up, top 3 recommendations for a cultural shift in dementia care. We need to really start to think about how we're delivering dementia care education to be more caregiver-centered and team-focused so as to increase caregiver engagement and meet the changing needs of our changing workforce. Adapt educational curricula to meet the needs of changing generations, incorporating things such as gamification, the interactive type videos that are becoming more and more popular, and we're actually developing interactive videos this year in our operational plan. Flipped classrooms, that initial inoculation of learning prior to coming to a gentle persuasive approaches session so that we can engage in meaningful dialogue, case studies to better prepare people, and to really expand the role of our certified coaches to be true mentors and lead change in our dementia education, and also incorporating simultaneously tools around just-in-time learning for our younger generation. We also need to involve them in decision-making in our education and how education is being delivered to improve their engagement and make learning a real reality and an exciting opportunity for our caregivers.
For me, the journey began where I thought I could go and teach people how to work with people with dementia in a prepared environment, and I had a big lesson to learn. I learned that if I'm going to do this, I have to work with an organization. It's not just looking at the person, the physical environment, and the social model of care. It is looking at the organization, bringing them on board, and creating teams that will work together. So now I begin by having discussions with many organizations and say, when the team is on board, I'm on board, let's move it forward. My goal is to expose the abilities of those living with dementia and other forms of cognitive loss. And there's 2 ways to sum it up. Everything I do for you, I steal from you. And a life with purpose is the purpose of life. When we achieve those 2 things in long-term care, I am creating a change in culture. So I can tell you how to do it, but how do we get there? Because I provide the education. So after a lot of investigation and a lot of reading about culture change, the 2 models that I think really speaks to how I move forward are Green and Kruder's Precede-Proceed model, and Casper has done this this paper will come out in the Canadian Journal on Aging, and also Cotter's Culture Change. The predisposing factors are that shared vision. Are organizations truly speaking to the vision, mission, and values? And if not, then let's start talking, and how do we get there? That climate of change is important, creating the team, and so much of this you've already heard of today. Where are we now? Where do we want to be, and how do we want to get there? This just came out the press yesterday. It's called the Checklist for Change. And these are all the things that are in the workshop where now you learn in these 2 days, here's the list, go through it and see if we can check it off. And one of the things that's in here from Tabor Manor is values-based job descriptions. That's helping us to be prepared. The next thing is education for all. And all my colleagues who are up here, all of this education is part of what we need. The staff do not have the education to be able to do the job they do because it's not in the curriculum already. And that's why the geriatric certificate program was created, was to provide that education that is essential for those working with people living with long-term dementia or long-term care with dementia and other conditions. We need values-based leadership to move this forward. I can say this is where we want to go, but I have to talk to all of you to say, how do we want to get there? Let's create that team to discuss how we're going to do this, and I'm going to support you. And as I said earlier, a leader may not be a manager. I want to bring out the best in each of you and hear what you have to say. And I also have to I've done a lot of reading on habits. Habits can take up to 262 days to change a habit. So the research on culture change says it's going to take you almost a year to begin that journey. It's one person, one task, one step at a time is always the message that I am delivering. But we also have to commit the resources. And it's quite disturbing when you hear some of the numbers about how much is available for us to actually do the job after we pay salaries. The next part of the model says we have to reinforce. And one of the things I cannot stand is for a PSW to say to me, oh, I'm only a PSW. I say, thank you for being a PSW and thank you for supporting one of the most vulnerable sectors of our society. In fact, I hope to have it up soon. Next week is PSW week, I believe. I have just done a little video that is to say thank you to PSWs, so it'll be available on my website. We have to work together. We have to value each member of the team. That includes dietary, housekeeping, PSWs, recreation, and nursing, all working together. When we do this, we have to be accountable along the way. When I work with Jarlette Homes, we work with all the homes together, all 20, and once a month, everybody calls in and says what they created in change. Every home has a high five board. It's that is available for everybody to see what the successes have been. I say thank you to every member of the team, and I go back to the organization, and there's a page in here that says, how do you want to be rewarded? We work in a multicultural community. I teach here in Canada, I teach in Hong Kong, I teach in the USA, I teach in Australia. The issues are all the same. The question is, how do we create success working with individuals, teams, and organizations? My outcome is to create a place where people want to live, work, and visit.
My 3 recommendations, pretty simple. Work with people, not for people. We want to make sure that we are including the voices of people with dementia in what we do. Talking about the PSWs, they have such an important role. You're the front line. You need to be working with the residents in long-term care, not for them. If you can change your mentality to shift, do that complete shift, it is their home, you want to work with them. Okay, pretty simple idea. The other is work in authentic partnerships. So again, there's really 3 guiding principles to this authentic partnership approach, and it's to be genuine and it's a genuine regard for self and others. So making sure that people are recognized and for their personhood. Valuing also that the synergistic relationships that that are created within the teams. So recognizing that often our strengths are harnessed when we're working together as a team, and that's been said as well already. Focus on the process rather than the outcome. So how do we get there? You know, we have a vision, we have a clear vision, but how do we actually get there? So focusing on what we're doing. And in order to do that, there really are, we have identified 5 enabling factors to be able to get you to these working in authentic partnerships. They're connecting and committing. So really connecting with other people, committing to the process, creating safe spaces. So physically, emotionally, making sure that when people are coming and working together as a team, that they feel safe in that environment. Also valuing the different perspectives. So establishing and maintaining open communication, and also conducting, we have to, when we're looking at the process, we also have to come back and think about what we're doing and reflect on that, and then take that information and reapply it. So that's a little bit, that's a very nutshell of what an authentic partnership is. There is a paper published on MAREP's authentic partnerships if you're interested in that. The other thing I'd like to say is, again, and I think that's been said already, is focus on strengths and abilities, not on deficits, not what they need, but what you can do together. Ask residents, what is it that you would like? What's meaningful to you? And how can we work together to make that happen?
From pieces, the top three recommendations looking at the pieces cornerstones. So when you look at the pieces cornerstones and the value of having those 4 varied cornerstones, the shared solution finding, really looking at enhancing training, or enhancing and translating knowledge, validating and acting together. For what comes out of that is understanding that no one person is an expert. Pieces is not an expert model. It really builds on the collective wisdom and values the experience of everybody who's part of the care. And so understanding that no one person writes the care plan, no one person is the expert, but we need to involve everybody is number one. Number two, this piece talks about enablers in the process, and as Gail mentioned and other people have mentioned, actively involving all levels of the organization and engaging them is really key. It's key to the cornerstone. So in long-term care, a key enabler is at the leadership level. Susan Brown mentioned this morning collaborative leadership, and again, for a lot of our education initiatives, that's very, very clear and has become very, very obvious. Leadership paves the way for mobilizing pieces as well as some of the other education programs into a real knowledge translation. And third for pieces is the use of a systematic and comprehensive tool. So the pieces 3-question template is very systematic, very comprehensive, but it's also very practical. It can be done very in the moment to problem solve a specific behavior. It's a very easy approach to use and very effective.
Okay, so I think one of the themes that's really coming out today is that education is only part of the equation. A lot of times when I get referrals, it's can you fix it, or can you do this training so things will be better tomorrow? And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, and we know that. So this is really the BHAG, right? The big, hairy, audacious goal of the day. The bolded are the recommendations from you first, and then underneath is sort of my interpretation of that. So again, we talked about why we need to understand the person with dementia, knowing their life story, knowing their personality. One of my colleagues jokes that she's already written her care plan. She's a baby boomer. And with that, she's also attached a sympathy card because she knows based on her personality, it will not be easy to look after her in long-term care. Some of you might know who she is. Then interacting with skill and understanding. So we talked about that, making sure they have the training. There are times when we're engaging with staff and they really don't know. They don't know what the trigger was and they're not sure how they can do things differently. Education can help with part of that, certainly, but also tied to that, and we cover some of that in the You First program, is the level of professionalism that's needed, both in terms of when we're interacting with residents, when we're interacting with families, and then even how our teams are interacting with each other, right? Sometimes we call it shift wars. Days is complaining, evenings didn't do their work, and evenings is complaining nights isn't doing their job, all of that fun stuff that we tend to see sometimes. And then making sure that information is readily accessible. Yes, it's in the care plan. Yes, it's in the Cardex, but do all team members have access to that? Does your housekeeper know what some of the triggers of those behaviors are? And then looking at the team engagement, we've heard this again and again, that those expert models don't work. If you're going to send one staff to somebody's training and expect they come back and fix everything, it doesn't work that way. And that's why I really like the fact that You First incorporates the pieces model. So your registered staff are going to have that. And then the rest of your staff are also going to understand pieces and why we're doing these huddles and why we're getting together. And again, that includes your housekeeper. Somebody mentioned that this morning. Where I get most of my information is the housekeeper, because they know when the family left what time that was and the resident was upset, and they're the ones singing and dancing in the resident's room and really engaging with that person. So we get a lot of great information there. As well, looking at even from the community perspective, we've had police go through this curriculum, as well as adult day programs, mental health crisis services. So again, we're all speaking the same language, right? We know how to support these clients through these transitions. So that collaboration is absolutely key, and then leadership support is absolutely critical, because I can make sure the staff leave my education feeling really enthused about it, really excited, wanting to go back tomorrow and change the world. But the system needs to support them to be able to do that. And sometimes it does mean policy changes, practice changes, so that leadership support is really critical there.
I just wanted to ask, how much time is being devoted to this type of training for students who are aspiring to become a nurse, aspiring to become a personal support worker? It seems like all of this is education for people who are existing in the workforce.
So we've integrated GPA into the personal support worker curricula. In fact, we're piloting GPA eLearn in 3 school boards with the intent to roll out to all 21 school boards in Ontario. We've also piloted GPA eLearn with the Ryerson University fourth-year nursing students. It's now part of their curricula. And our goal this year, one of my to-dos, is to negotiate relationships with other colleges and universities with RPNs and RNs and integrate it into curricula.
Since there is no standard PSW program, I'm working with one program at a time, trying to add this on as an option for people. The second thing is I'm working with Lethbridge University, and we're going to be putting it into the new recreation program, and that will be connected to the professional therapeutic recreation group. And we have also offered it at a number of colleges as an elective for different programs. And there are some universities that have put it into their curriculum, but there's nothing standardized.
The other thing that we're doing a lot, we're recognizing a need in Ireland, is a lot of the times we've been focusing our education on long-term care specifically. We're also starting to do a lot of cross-agency education. So for the You First program, I'll host it in the community. And then we'll have not only the students come, but also long-term care staff who might have been doing the job for 25 years. You might have the police, so different people from different industries there. So we get to learn from each other. Because for some of the curriculums, it's really hard if students haven't had that exposure to working with clients with dementia yet. So we really find there's value when we can mix those care partners together. So we do that usually at least quarterly in our area.
Can I just add to that? Sorry. The other thing that we do, that I do too, is I do offer the workshop for caregivers, and we have also tried to offer support to the caregivers if people are still living in the community, so that they can come and get the education.
And the Living the Dementia Journey curriculum is also, we're looking at creating a web learning, e-learning platform for this particular curriculum as well. So it'll be offered not only to people who are working in long-term care currently, but anybody who is in the community and is interested.
It depends on the nature of our curriculum. So some of them are set up a little differently. So You First at this time is for staff working with clients that have dementia. There's certainly other trainings that we would offer to family caregivers through our local Alzheimer's Society chapters.
And I'll speak to the gentle persuasive approaches. We're actually piloting it with cohorts of help volunteers. So with the intent to actually expand that into informal caregivers. Piloting first, though, to make sure that it's meeting their needs.
I also have homes that offer it to the resident or to the family councils to let them know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we're trying to do differently.
And the 6 in-depth modules that we provide with the Living the Dementia Journey are also offered to residents themselves, families, and volunteers in long-term care.
So is there some way for an organization to weed through, I believe in all 5 of your programs. How can an organization decide which one's the best for them? Because I could throw a dart and you'd all be great.
Well, Ontario back a few years ago developed the BETSI tool, behavioral education training. I forgot what I actually named BETSI. I chaired that committee with Dr. Joel Sadavoy. And that was a great tool that was featured, supported by BSO, is available. And I can actually send it to you if you'd like. But it actually identifies the core competencies of each of the curricula, as well as an organizational assessment that you should conduct to ensure that what you're choosing is going to meet your needs of the organization. It's a great tool.
I would have to disagree with you and say that it's all important. My feeling is that all staff who work in long-term care need to be trained properly. And at present, most people, there's an excellent analogy that looks at how many hours of education and training does a hairdresser need and a dog groomer. And now you go, I'm not doing the math for you, you go compare that to what a PSW and housekeeping gets. And I'll tell you who's more important. You would not leave your hairdresser to learn the 1 or 2 takeaways from a 2-day workshop to cut your hair and color it. but you will leave the most vulnerable sector of our society in the hands of people who are getting a 2-hour follow-up of something that may have been a 1-day workshop, a 2-day workshop, or a 1-week workshop. I think we need to train every single staff in long-term care in every one of these pieces of education for them to do their job properly. And that's my soapbox.
And just to add to that, each of these different curriculum are curricula. They are complementary, and they have specific components that they focus more on. So I think it just depends on the learning needs of where you're working, and the learning needs of the staff and administration, and yeah.
Here's one way to think about it. Pieces in you first informs who the person is. What do we know about this person? The DementiAbility methods focus on validation is the communication piece. How do you communicate, especially understanding nonverbal communication? Then it focuses on who is this person and understanding the pieces, the you first, getting to know who that person is, making the observations, using the model that was just talked about, and then figuring out what to do about it. And the what to do about it is living with meaning and purpose, putting memory cues up, helping them to find their way, giving them an agenda, connecting them socially, addressing all the responsive behaviors. And GPA looks at how you can, it's very integrated into the what to do, and if the responsive behaviors get away from you, you need that GPA.
And I might just add the GPA is based on the Paris framework, which is really integral to sustain the change that you need. So it's not just about delivering a workshop. It's actually built on a model that you will sustain the change, and it's multidisciplinary. Nutrition, housekeeping, anybody that interacts with the
They all are.
Pieces is registered staff. Yeah, right. That's the only, Pieces is probably the only program out of all of us that is focused on registered staff at this point.
But then you have the you first.
Then we've got the
to
you first for
complement it.
non-registered
So
staff.
it's
Yep.
all very multidisciplinary, and that's why today's day has been perfect, because it's been talking about teams at every turn. We've talked about teams. And every person who is supporting a person with dementia needs to understand what this is all about.
I am a PSW.
Oh, yay. Everybody can applaud.
Mine is not more of a question, it's more of a comment. I'm a team member of Schlegel's. I've had the opportunity of going to all of these with gentle persuasive approach and the Montessori way, validation. Sharon, she's been to our village to talk about a lot of ways of decreasing medications and understanding behaviors, and our local Alzheimer's as well coming in. And as a PSW, it's a strong tool, and I highly recommend starting to educate us, and I've had that opportunity, and I take full advantage of it. And because I've helped with the quality of care within my village, it also increases my quality of myself. So yeah, I'm a person that likes to go into work, and every day is a challenge, and we use them. It can be as simple as reducing a personal expression by moving a chair that you would normally not want a resident to be in their room alone. It's their home, and moving it into a hallway and being part of that environment where they're calm, where the medication is not needed, and they're not in a chair sleeping because of the personal expressions. There's so many different ways that we can utilize what they've shown. So I just wanted to say that. You guys have inspired me to be a better PSW.
My name is Dee Lender. I'm the Executive Director of the Ontario Association of Residents' Councils. Beside me is Josie. She's the past president of OARC. One of our key elements of our strategic plan is to equip residents' councils with what they need to work best with folks, co-residents who have dementia and cannot speak for themselves, so that the decisions that come through a residence council are truly, at best, the collective decision of the whole body of residents. If any one of you ladies up on the panel would like to partner with us, I have in my head, and our board of directors is made up of residents across Ontario who live in long-term care homes, exclusively residents who live in long-term care homes. They want to be part of the solution. They have said to us as a team over and over again, we want to learn, we want to learn how to live, not just cope with our co-residents, but live with joy and vitality and have great living every day with our friends who are living with cognitive challenges. Please reach out to me. I seemed kind of rude because I was texting during your presentation, but I've already emailed a couple of you sitting here in my chair. We would love to have applied learning and then to track that learning over the course of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, and see data that tracks the applicable learning and ability of residents to be part of the solution, so that, again, medications are reduced, and because residents are part of the team. So thank you.
Yeah. And really, that's how the Living the Dementia Journey was created, was with in partnership with residents, actually at Schlegel Villages. This was done in partnership with them. And we sat with them for months and talked about the specific things that they would like to see in long-term care. And in piloting this particular program, we did have family members and residents attend the in-depth sessions as well, and the feedback was wonderful. So it definitely is a very, because it's an experiential learning as well. So when you were talking about your experiences, you come together as PSWs or other people in food services, and you talk about the experiences that you have, and you learn from one another. So we found that the case studies that you were talking about, these are all components of part of this new, and the reason why people aren't hearing about it is because we are literally just launching this program into the public. It has been piloted within Schlegel Villages, and so we don't have as much traction as some of these other programs, but we hope that we can definitely complement what's already out there as well.
So I'll preface by saying I have no clinical background whatsoever, but I do manage some of the resident survey and some of our newer resident feedback programs. And I'm really interested in tools, I guess, adaptive tools for getting the voice of that resident who we often assume maybe the family speaks for them instead, or maybe we just don't bother because they can't fill out the 20-question survey or things like that. And how do we get the staff buy-in to do that as well?
I would be happy to begin that conversation. One of the things that in my WOW model is, who is this person, past and present? I have a form that's called All About Me. It's free downloadable from my website. And I have homes right across the country who have made a commitment to filling one of those forms out for every single resident. It's kept in their room, in their wheelchair, in their pocket. So when there's a conversation, details about this person's life, not just from the voice of the family, but from the voice of the person. We also have a book that's called Let's Talk About Me, and it's pictures and it's stories of the person from the past. And the one thing that consistently comes out in our workshops is the staff do not know the residents. They say they don't know who the family members are, what they did for a living. Some of these stories we've already heard from here today. So I say, let's get the information out of the computer and into the hands of those who need it. And I ask in the workshop, who needs it most? And everybody says, well, the staff. No, the person with dementia needs it most. They forget their own journey. So we need to have the images with the details to help the person remember their own narrative, and then have the staff talk about the details that they have available to them. And as the memory cascades open, you track and document those details so we have rich experiences to talk about, like that beautiful picture of the dancing